Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. What if Naruto was born with an Angal bloodline? Part 13. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this and comment for next part. And now let's start the fanfic. There you go, you just made the first step towards becoming a true shinobi, whether or not it was intentional. If you want to be in this world and stop the cycle within your clan, then you need to be a real shinobi and not live inside a fantasy land that will only get you killed. Naruto before he faced the group, who's next? Naruto said with Lee immediately running up and stabbing the body of the next bandit in the eye. Naruto-kun, I will become a true shinobi even if it means that I must take lives to get there. Lee said with Neji sighing deeply. Well, I guess I can't let Lee stand me up, he said as he walked up to his bandit and sliced the mon's jugular vein. If you can't beat join Kiba said as he stabbed his bandit in his chest. So troublesome, Shikamaru said before he ran up to his opponent and simply slit the man's throat. I guess if Shikamaru can do it so can I, Choji said as he ran up and stabbed the bandit between his eyes. I knew that this day would come but not this early, Shino said as he stabbed his bandit in the center of his forehead. I suppose that it's time I take this thing for real, Sasuke said as he tossed the kunai at his bandit and then kicked the kunai into the mon's chest. Naruto sighed at the boy's need to show off, although inwardly he would have to say that he would give Sasuke an 8/10 for that. Once all the guys were gone, all that were left was Tenten, Hinata, and Ino to go through the ordeal. Naruto saw the three of them look skeptic about slaying another person, as Sakura was currently vomiting on the ground with Kakashi by her side to help her cope with the action she took. Naruto decided to speak to them, as this was something they needed to do so they could cope with it better. You guys know what you must do, so why are you resisting? Naruto asked with Ino being the first to speak up. But Naruto, it's another living person. How can you just so willingly take their lives and not be at all concerned about doing it? She asked with Hinata and Tenten nodding. Naruto then walked back and grabbed one man by the back of his head as he stirred from unconscious state. These men are bandits, meaning that they don't follow the moral standards of living. These men love to rape women and children, kill a child or parent in the eyes of their loved ones, rob people of all that they have earned in life, and are not afraid to ruin lives if it means that they get to do what they want. So tell me, what is his life worth for the many that he has already ruined? In fact, what are any of these men worth after the thousands of lives they destroyed so willingly and unmercifully ruined them? Naruto asked with the three girls looking at him for a moment, before all three of them charged at the prone bodies of the bandits remaining on the post and stabbed them in their neck. The second after the blades entered their necks, they each fell to the ground and cried with their senseis coming to condole them. Kurenai looked at him for a moment and wondered if this was necessary, but by his nod she could tell that he knew her unasked question. Okay guys, great job and welcome to manhood boys. This is only but the first step into being true shinobi for you, but don't think that I will let up on your training, Naruto said with the boys nodding before they headed back to the village to rest up while the girls were picked up by their senseis and carried back to the village. Naruto sighed before he walked up to the last remaining bandit, who was now awakened in fear of the boy in front of him. What do you want? He asked before Naruto grabbed his neck and slammed his head on the post. You are a shinobi from Iowa, are you not? He asked with the man nodding his head vigorously in hopes that he would be allowed to live through this ordeal. Yes, I am, he said before Naruto's grip tightened around his neck as a devilish smirk crossed his face. That's good to know, Naruto said as he loosened his grip on the man's neck. How do you know that I'm a former shinobi from Iowa? He asked before he was backhanded by the blonde boy and felt some of his teeth shattering. Because your face is in the bingo book, idiot. I may not be a mercenary anymore, but I still have a vivid memory of faces and I remember yours easily. Matera Raibu, former Junin from Iwagakure after escaping during a mission and the murder of 3 shinobi, including his wife and best friends. You are also wanted for 3 counts of rape in the 1st degree, child molestation, alt, aggravate adult, and robbery. An A-class missing shinobi that would give a somewhat fine value among the black market, although the bounty on your head isn't even worth the trouble of cashing in on it. Naruto said as he took out Black Joker. What do you want from me? He asked with Naruto simply looking him in the eye. You're going to tell me something, and you better answer correctly or else I will get pissed. Naruto said with a dark smile coming off his face. The next day, Naruto entered his apartment after walking Ino, Tenten, Hinata, and Kurenai home since the four ladies asked. He began to notice that the girls were acting funny around him, almost as if they wanted to say something to him but didn't know what exactly. After he returned to the building they stayed in, the girls appeared to have waited for him to come back. When he stepped through the doors, he felt the arms of the three girls cling onto him, and since he knew he had to be a gentleman, allowed them to hold him for the night. He was very tired at this point, since the trip back was tiring as it was. He rarely got like this, but that was something that always happens when he fights multiple opponents. Kid, perhaps it's time you get used to multi-fighting again. Kyuubi suggested to his vessel, as while the boy would sometimes be very tired when fighting multiple opponents, his power was able to help him with an hour of rest. I could, but it would be too easy for me. The best opponents that I can fight are you and Kumori. Naruto responded to his fox companion, after taking a drink from a water bottle he kept in his fridge and removing his shirt and just stood in his wife beater. He then took off his pants and slipped on a pair of shorts that he either slept in or just wore when he didn't feel like putting on cloths to walk around. In fact, he would sometimes walk the streets with just this on and caught the sight of many women fainting or some drooling with nosebleeds leaking from their nose. Then I guess it's time we had another spar, which is good as I have been dying to get a good fight in and I need to stretch my legs. Kyuubi said with a dark smile on his face, knowing that he would enjoy fighting the blonde boy that was his vessel. Alright, I guess I owe you that for all you've done so far in being my backup system in battle. Naruto said to the fox, knowing that if it wasn't for the fox getting him out of a few tough jams then he would have died many years ago. While they wouldn't admit to each other, they were actually good friends, as some would say, due to their lives being in the other's hand. Naruto needed Kyuubi's help in fighting at times and Kyuubi needed him to live, so they held a mutual bond since the beginning. Just get your rest, kid, then summon me later. If you win then I'll teach a new jutsu. He said with Naruto nodding before he drifted off to dreamland. Or at least he would have if not for the knocking on his door. Naruto's eyebrow twitched at that before he got up from his couch and walked over to the door. Whoever I behind that door better be a chick or I'm killing you. Naruto said as he opened the door to find the purple-haired Anbu named Azuki Yugao standing in front of him, who was thankful for the mask covering her face so it could hide her bright blush. Sorry Naruto-kun, but Hokage-sama asked that you come to his office immediately. She said. She met the boy a while ago when she spied on him training with a strange clone of himself, and before she had the chance to leave the area he caught her. She was surprised by how his perception and detection skills were on point that he could find an Anbu, although that was probably due to her not hiding to the best of her ability. After that day, they began to talk to each other and pretty soon they were on a name-to-name basis, then later on just hanging out at times. Unknown to anyone else in Konoha, Yugao was the second person in the village to truly know more about Naruto other than his name and external appearance, was something that Yugao treasured for some odd reason. Can it wait, Yugao? I'm trying to get some sleep after a long day. He said with the purple-haired woman laughing lightly at his depressed expression. Nope, it can't Naruto-kun, as he said that it is very important that you come. Yugao said with Naruto cursing to himself before he sighed deeply. Fine, let's go. Naruto said as Yugao placed her hand on Naruto's lower arm and dragged it up his arm slowly, getting a feel for tattoo-covered skin before she took hold of his shoulder and teleported herself and Naruto to the Hokage's office. Elsewhere, Naruto appeared in the office with Yugao to find the Hokage sitting behind his desk with a letter addressed to him. Yugao was then dismissed by the Hokage, which led to her nodding but not before giving Naruto a hug from behind his back and trail her finger over his chest. She then whispered something in his ear before she backed up and left the room, leaving a confused Sarutobi and a slightly blushing Naruto. What was that all about? He asked with Naruto shaking his head. It's complicated, but it always appears that I attract the crazy and older girls as much as I do with girls my own age. Anyway, why did you summon me? Naruto asked with Hiruzen shaking his head before he handed the letter to Naruto. This is a very important message from Hyuga Hiashi. Hiruzen said with Naruto picking up the letter with confusion on his face. Naruto then opened the scroll and began to read the words inside. Dear Namikaze Naruto, you are hereby invited to a formal dinner within the Hyuga clan estates tonight. Please cease from bringing weapons to this dinner, as I wish to discuss with you the contract that arranges both yours and my daughter's marriages. I wish to also extend to you a union of peace between our clans, as I've come to recent terms with my defeat upon your hands, and I wish to ask a personal request of you. Please wear appropriate attire and I look forward to having a talk with you. Thank you. Hyuga Hiashi, head of the Hyuga clan. Well, now I have to push my plans back. Naruto said, handing the letter to Hiruzen, as he read it and his eyes widened. How are you not excited, Naruto-kun? This is the Hyuga clan we're talking about, and a dinner with them would only equal high prestige for you. He said with Naruto snorting. I've been to plenty formal dinners with feudal lords, village leaders, and kingdoms with proposals of marriage or partnerships coming from those that either have daughters, sisters, or sometimes even the women that invited me. Not to mention all the proposals that have been asked of me to bear their children, Naruto said in his mind, as he remembered one woman from Kiri flirted with him on almost every sentence that she said to him. But that didn't mean that he didn't learn while under her, but the flirting would sometimes take more of the learning away. Well, you should still go, Naruto-kun, as Hiashi holds quite the political standing in the village. Sarutobi said with Naruto sighing again before he nodded and left the room with a swirl of feathers. Later that night, Naruto was now walking towards the Hyuga compound, wearing his best formal kimono that he used to attend at all his formal parties. This was a gift given to him by his sister, Maya, after he turned 7, and for each year he had the same design given to the kimono when he went for a size change. Naruto was on his way towards the dinner with the Hyuga clan after being asked personally by the head of the clan Hyuga Hiashi to attend. He would have to say that he was looking forward to this somewhat, as it was the only thing he could do other than train, but he could do that anytime to keep his skills up. He did wish that he could train Kurenai tonight, but the woman said that she was tired from the mission as well, so she couldn't actually train tonight. While he wouldn't tell anyone this, especially Kurenai, he was kinda sad that he wouldn't get to see her tonight. He was pretty sure that he grew attached to her over all the time they spent together and was used to her company, but he was digressing from the point. While he didn't know much on the Hyuga clan personally, what he did know was that they are well known for their sophistication and occasional big egos, but nothing was far worse than Hyuga women. In the Hyuga clan, it's a very male-run clan, as Hyuga males tend to have much more freedom than females, but that may be due to the fact that the males make up the vast majority. Either way, he was nervous about meeting the girl. He arrived at the front gate, and saw the guards bow their heads towards him, and allowed him through the gates. It appears that part 1 was over and now part 2. Meanwhile, Hyuga Hinata sat at her seat with a very nervous look on her face. Today she would be meeting the man that she would marry. This was not unusual. Hinata was nervous almost all the time, and especially so when it involved her father, her sister, or family functions in any way. While she knew that her father loved her, she was downright scared of her father most of the time, and she knew that her sister could be a real bitch to her, even though she was cordial and polite to her most of the time. This time, it was a dinner to host a family friend, as her father had put it. She had no clue as to who the guest was. Her father had refrained from telling anyone, but she had no doubts that it was probably some faraway dignitary that knew her father through some distant relation, or some such thing. Family dinners like this often were held for pompous and arrogant, important people, from around the Fire Country, and sometimes even out of the Fire Country. Hinata was expected to be present for them as a matter of courtesy, and her sister was there just because she was her sister. They also served the unenviable position of being eye candy for anyone who would visit. She knew that her father disliked that particular aspect of their job. He really did, but he had no real choice in the matter. It was simply the way of noble families. She almost had to suppress a shudder. She couldn't count on both hands and feet the number of times a visiting dignitary had leered at her or her sister lecherously, and she had been forced to simply smile and blush as a good female should. It was one of the few things that served to actually piss her off. But thankfully they didn't say anything about them for fear that her father would beat the living crap out of them. And even the most idiotic person knew not to mess with a Hyuga's child, or they would suffer the consequences, to the most important thing to a man. Gentle fist style. She was broken from her thoughts as to who the mystery guest could be as a branch house member knocked on the door to their eating area and announced that he was here. Hiyashi's face lit up, causing both sisters to look at each other with confused expressions, before Hiyashi told the guard to let him in and show him to the dining room. The guard acknowledged and whisked himself away, only to reappear a few minutes later with another, shorter shadow standing to his left. The door swung open to reveal the guard and Naruto standing beside him. Hinata quickly blushed upon the sight of the blonde boy, while her fingers began to press together. Hanabi shuddered at his seriousness in his eyes, but Hinata was strangely quiet. Hanabi looked over to her sister to see the girl's reaction to the blonde's appearance within their home. Before she could ask just what was wrong, Hiyashi spoke. "Ah, Naruto-san, it's good to see that you've come. I trust that your days in the leaf have been quite pleasant." Hiyashi said with Naruto nodding. "It's been good so far, with the training and the missions I had to foretake, but other than that, yes, it has been very pleasant." Naruto said with Hiyashi nodding and Hinata trying not to look at Naruto, but was failing miserably when her eyes kept glancing at him. She felt ready to faint when he looked back at her and their eyes locked, but she quickly regained her control when she told herself not to faint before the boy that practically changed her life for the better. The boy looked very cute in his outfit and was almost ready to jump on him, but Hiyashi interfered, seeing his daughter in the state that reminded him of his beloved wife. "Man, she is just like Hitome-chan when we were dating." "Well, Naruto-san, I heard you just got back from a mission with Hinata and her team today. How was it?" Hiyashi asked with his daughter stiffening up a bit, remembering what she did during that mission. Naruto saw her expression and knew that she didn't tell him yet that she gained her first kill. The Konoha 12 had to go on a joint C-rank mission together to a village with bandit problem. While I took care of all of them, I decided to do something for all of them. Naruto said as he sipped a cup of tea that a branch member laid out, which he thanked said member for. "Really? What did you have them do, Naruto-san?" Hiyashi said even though he knew what Naruto would say. He could tell just by looking at his daughter that she gained her first kill and was trying to coo with it. He actually planned to speak to her a little later about it, but since he had company over, it couldn't hurt to ask. "I had all of them commit their first kill, and while they weren't so willing to do it," Naruto said with confidence in his voice as he drank more of his tea. That made Hiyashi's eyes widen, since he didn't expect for all of them to get their first kill. "If I may ask, why did you have them kill so early?" he asked. "Because I gained my first kill when I was 7 after my sensei made me do it. That first kill is the weakness of any strong fighter, as you will intentionally aim to not kill the opponent but to win the fight in just the fight. However, the opponent would have already killed and would be more than happy to try and kill his opponent. So I simply decided to get rid of that first kill weakness for them, and as such they have become stronger than they know," Naruto said, as he remembered when Maya held him close to her and just stayed with him. "Well, that is quite the theory you have there, Naruto-san. It appears that Slayer has trained you well over your time with him. Hiyashi said, drinking his tea as well. He then looked to the side and noticed his daughters, which caused him to slap his head. Oh, excuse me, but I forgot to introduce my daughters. The little one is my youngest daughter named Hanabi. She's named after my grandmother, who died after the Second Shinobi War. He said with the painful memory of being at his grandmother's funeral going through his mind, but he quickly shook his head and came back to his senses. My oldest daughter, as you may already know, is Hinata. She's the current clan heiress and is your fiancé. Hiyashi said with Naruto turning to the two girls and bowed his head in respect to them. When he looked at Hinata, he gave an unconscious wink to her, which made her blush a huge red that turned her into a tomato. While I can understand the need to have us engaged for clan union, I must ask why have us engaged before we were even born? Naruto asked with Hiyashi smiling to himself. Well, it actually was my late wife's idea, to set you up with my daughter. She and your mother were the best of friends, thanks to your father being best friends with my late brother and me. They wanted to have their first kids to not only grow up together but be sure that you two would never marry anyone else but each other. Sadly though, your mother disappeared after she gave birth to you. To this very day we are trying to find out what happened to her, as one day she gave birth to you, then the next she's gone. It was shortly after your mother's disappearance did the Yondaime take care of you for the next 3 months before, well you know. He said with Naruto sighing deeply. He made his lifelong mission to find or discover what became of his mother, but so far all he got was blanks. He just wanted one clue to send on a path to her, but it would only leave blanks. Not even the note his father left him was able to help him, as the ink spot already took out what he wrote in it. To think, the only thing he had to connect him to his mother was a ink spot. It was after that, dinner went off without a hitch. Naruto used as much table manners as he could manage, which impressed Hiyashi greatly, but he saw that his daughter just wouldn't stop looking between eating her food and looking at the boy. He felt a smile come to his face at the fact that at least half of them were ready and now all he had to do was make sure that the other half was prepared. Once dinner was done, Hiyashi and Naruto now sat in the Mont's office, which was more than a blank white room with a small traditional-style desk in the middle of the room. Hiyashi poured himself and Naruto a small saucer of sake and pushed his saucer over to him. Both took a sip before Hiyashi sighed and simply looked up with an impassive gaze. Tell me, Naruto-san, how do you feel about my daughter Hinata? I like her. She would make an excellent bride to have. Naruto said, sipping his sake once more before feeling the alcohol burn his throat a bit. Well, that's good to know. I was a little worried that you wouldn't want to have my daughter as a wife. He said before sipping his saucer and letting the alcohol slip down his throat. I have seen her growth in her shinobi training after I met you, and while I wish to not talk about that, I must say that she has been doing well in her training. Hiyashi said, while admiring Naruto's ability to hold his liquor, as the boy appeared to have drank many different types of alcohols in his short life. Naruto took another drink and spoke to the Hyuga clan head. I have seen her progression as well, Hiyashi-san. She seems to gain more strength from you than anyone else in the village. He said with the man looking slightly confused. What do you mean by that? I thought you would be a bigger influence to her after all the training you've given her. Hiyashi said, since Hinata told him about the blonde teaching her after he made a vow to change his parental ways after Naruto came by and defeated him. True. I have been teaching her since I first met her, but in reality, you are her true influence. He said, taking in another drink. She wants to make you proud of her with all her heart, so she strives to learn as much as she can from me and Kurenai. She's actually been able to learn a lot under the woman, although not as much as she could since the woman is a genjutsu type. Naruto said with Hiyashi nodding his head. Well, do not worry, for I will be a better father to her, but there is another reason why I asked you here. He stated with Naruto nodding his head. Very well then, please tell me. He said with Hiyashi nodding before he spoke. Later on, Naruto now left the grounds of the Hyuga clan home with a small smirk on his face after this night. To think that so much has now changed after one dinner with a clan. He looked forward to doing what was asked upon him by the Hyuga clan head, although he was sure that it would take some getting used to after a while of doing it. I take it that the night went well. Kyubi said after getting some beauty rest after getting the night off from the boy. It was all right, was all he said as he headed home. Life was good for the Kyubi vessel and he looked forward to what else was in store for him. A month went by after the night he had dinner with Hyuga clan and things weren't the same again, or at least when it came to the boy's constantly changing life. After that night, many rumors went around the village about his time spent with the Hyuga clan and the possibility that he could very well be engaged to one of the Mon's daughters. It was also thanks to that night that the blonde boy saw his fan club increase to higher levels, with some leaving the Sasuke fan club, with said fan club now wishing to wage a fangirl war to prove which one of the boys they desired was superior to the other. Naruto could honestly care less about that, as he was now spending more time with Hinata, since in order for the marriage to be set in motion, they needed to spend more time and learn more about the other than they currently did. Hinata felt honored to have him a lot longer than she did when they were training and felt even more delighted that it was more time that is personal as well. She learned a lot about the boy personally and that in itself made her the third female in the village that knew the most about the boy as opposed to Sarutobi being the only person who knows everything about the mysterious blonde. Naruto was also promoted to the status of Special Genin, which gave him more freedom in his rank than the others. The advantages of this rank were that it allowed him to not only participate in his team's missions but also the missions of the other squads in the village or even doing them alone. Needless to say, the blonde was very happy to hold this rank, as he already completed 2 missions in places called the Land of Greens and the Land of Birds, where in both places he was able to bring 2 new daimyos. In the Land of Greens, he had to protect a group of settlers trying to reach the main city of that land. When Naruto arrived to the country, he learned that the settlers were actually props set up by the hiding princess named Haruna and her shinobi followers, who used something called the flower ninja art. As they progressed through the land, it was learned that the girl's father was murdered by a group of rouge shinobi, who each controlled an element to a high degree. In fact, to such a degree, one of the followers was killed by a man that could control water to a degree that he could summon it from the very grass itself. The girl Haruna wasn't easy to deal with, as she would constantly test his patience with her bullshit about how the people she traveled with were only pawns for her to regain control of her country. However, even though all this was going on, Naruto found this mission to be extremely easy, as no matter how strong one is, they will always have some kind of weakness. The one that could control water could only use it to a certain degree, as he could only summon water in wet sources or plants, thanks to special tonfas that he wielded. As soon as he fought that man, the fight ended as soon as it began, as Naruto destroyed the tonfas and killed him before he could even know what happened. The second person he faced was more of a challenge, as he was able to use a special magnetism ninjutsu that he developed due to eating large quantities of iron, in combination with a spiked chain mace. Well, even with all that working in the Mon's favor, he still fell to Naruto's hand, as with just a simple use of lightning chakra, he disabled the Mon's jutsu and killed him. The last one was probably the only one that was impressive out of the 3, as he used a ninjutsu to summon ice and use it to focus the sun's rays onto his opponent and cause a great explosion. The only problem with that is that when the man used it, Naruto simply brought his sword up to protect him and shot the blast at the man and killed him with his own technique. After that, Haruna decided to take up her place on the throne, and while she asked Naruto to stay in the land with her, he simply stated that he couldn't, but he will come to visit her. When he went to the Land of Birds, he learned that it was to help the country with something called the Cursed Warrior, which was a man that would appear to attack their leader named Moso and several other people that worked with the man. Naruto knew that something was wrong about this whole Cursed Warrior thing, as when he first encountered it, the thing completely vanished from sight and only left behind its armor, that Naruto noticed wasn't even worn. Once the second encounter came, Naruto killed it and saw that it was a man working for a man named Hoki, who was a Watari ninja in a group of Rouge shinobi. After that was done, Naruto saw that the cursed warrior was really a woman that was named Toki, who was trying to get revenge for her brother Sagi and her father Awashi, who was murdered by the leader Moso. After a brief battle with Hoki and ridding the world of another hole, Toki took her place as the daimyo of the land of birds. Those missions weren't very hard, but he was sure that it got him the hearts of two more females and thus making them members of the Naruto Lovers Club, which was all the princesses and female leaders that he saved on his travels. The blonde boy was currently standing before the Hokage with his team and Team 10 after completing a joint D-rank mission that he ensured that he wouldn't dare to participate. It was a mission to catch that damn cat again, whose master is so retarded that she can't even buy a damn cage or stop hugging the damn creature. It always ended up scratching Sasuke and Sakura before Naruto would knock it out, and then they would take it back to the owner, who would constantly cry about the cat being found and would hug the damn thing to death. Nowadays Naruto would just use a genjutsu to put the thing to sleep before even trying to entertain the cat and bring it back to its master. Stupid bitch, your cat escapes once every 3 days and sometimes I don't even think it's the same cat. Naruto thought in his head as his eyes lay upon the grinning Sakura and Sasuke, who had bandages all over their faces. I'm quite surprised that you guys got that mission done as fast as you did. In fact, that is a new record in capturing that cat. Hiruzen said with Naruto's eyebrow twitching before he spoke. Hokage-sama, how many times has the record changed for that mission? He asked with Sarutobi bringing up a book called The Book of Records, Capturing the Daimyo's Wife's Cat, Tora. The old man opened the book to the last page and read the name of the group that recently held the record. Let's see, the last group to hold that record was Team Jiraiya when they captured the cat and returned it in just a little under 3 minutes. You guys beat it in 2.5 minutes, so you're now the official co-record holders, congratulations. He said with everyone giving off fake cheering and Naruto saying, what an honor. Sarutobi then recorded the last mission before he put the book away and spoke. Now then, the reason I had your teams working together is because I wanted to see your teamwork before I gave you your next joint mission, which is a simply B-rank mission to Snow Country. He said with Naruto's interest now peaking at the sound of that. It appears that they are currently having their annual Snow Festival, and there is the chance that they could be attacked by a group of shinobi that call themselves the Rouge Warriors. The daimyo wishes to hire you to protect not only the festival but also her, since they expressed intentions to attack her. He said with Naruto's eyes narrowing slightly before he spoke. How long do we have for this mission? Naruto asked in a somewhat firm and demanding tone that everyone around him caught onto in a flash, and were now wondering what was making him act like that. You have 3 weeks to protect the festival, so I want you to gather as many items as you can to help you. Dismissed. The old man said with each shinobi bowing and walking out of the room, though one left in a whirl of feathers. Later that day, Naruto was currently silent as he sat along with the group 7 before him, as they were currently outside of Fire Country's borders and was about 6 hours away from the ferry that would take them towards Snow Country. They would try to continue in the morning, but for now, they needed to make camp for the night. The group, while silent, was not only thinking about the mission coming up but were also looking at the silent blonde-haired shinobi, who held a look that told people he was thinking hard about something important. Sakura wanted to break the ice and try to get a conversation going, since she wasn't one of the average people that enjoyed silence and liked being around people who wanted to talk. She was trying to think of a conversation starter, but Ino managed to beat her to the punch, already knowing the subject of what she wanted to discuss. Naruto. Ino called out, catching everyone's attention and the blonde boy as he ate the fish he caught. Yes, Ino, what do you want? Naruto said as he finished his fish and tossed the stick behind his back. I was wondering why you are being so silent, more silent than you usually are. Ino asked with her fingers pressing against each other in nervousness. Asuma saw this and was surprised at how nervous the girl was about the blonde-haired genin before him. Damn, This kid is actually making Ino do that. She must have a bigger crush on him than she would like to admit. Asuma thought, with Naruto turning his gaze onto her for a moment before he turned his gaze back to the flame. I got a lot of things on my mind, and right now the current trip to Yuki is one of them. He said, with the others getting intrigued. What does this mission have to do with anything? Sasuke asked, since he wanted to know as much about the blonde's past as he could so that he may go through the same trails and get the same but more powerful results. I haven't been to Yuki for a while after a job I was hired for while I was within that country to help them usurp a corrupt leader. It was a day that will never leave my memory until the day I die. Naruto said, remembering the day he once resided in Yuki after 2 years went by from the passing of his sensei. What happened in Yuki that is so traumatic for you? Kakashi asked, with everyone else nodding, knowing that whenever something came up and allowed the blonde to talk more about his past, it meant that they could learn more about him. Sasuke was listening intently, as he wanted to know everywhere the blonde boy traveled to in his past so that he may gain the same kind of power he has to kill his brother. I fought against their former leader Dotu, and while that man was by far overrated when it came to his strength, it was his thirst for bloodshed that caused even myself alarmed. Had it not been for some quick thinking and instant perception of what he was going to do, the man would have slaughtered countless soldiers along with their current daimyo's manager. He said, with the Junin looking surprised at that. So you were the one that saved Yuki no Kuni's current leader. I always thought that those were just rumors. Kakashi said, with Naruto shaking his head. Yes, I did save Koyuki-chan from that bastard, but to this day I regret what I did to him in front of her. He said before he stood up from his seat and placed his hands in his pockets. I'm going to go for a walk, don't wait up on me. Naruto said as he walked through the dark trees and soon vanished within them. Ino wanted to follow him, but a look from Asuma said otherwise, thus causing her to look at the group with some concern on her face. With Naruto, the blonde-haired shinobi currently stood in an open field with both his shirt and his sandals off, leaving his upper body and feet completely to the world. Naruto relaxed in the moonlight as he meditated within the lotus position with his fingertips touching and his head relaxed, breathing air through the nostrils. I take it you're going to release the seal tonight? Kyuubi asked, since it has been a while for his vessel to use what was now identified as his bloodline limit. Yeah, I think it's time I stretch them out for a little bit. Naruto responded before a light glow overtook him and the tattoo on his back that resembled a seal vanished before another tattoo appeared, which resembled a cross going from the top of his neck to the very base of his spine, along with the two sides going across his shoulders with angel wings also on the side of the cross. The wings then began to move slightly before they came off his back and floated in the air for a moment, until they grew until they became the size of actual angel wings that resembled a falcon for some odd reason. Naruto then got up from his meditative position and flapped his wings for a moment, getting the feel of them again after many months of non-usage. Naruto always wondered how he obtained these wings, as he had them since he was 7 years old during his time with his master. However, while he questioned them, he loved the feeling of being able to fly and experience the feeling of being a bird soaring through the clouds. I can't believe it's been this long since I used them. I almost feel like it's my first time flying again. Naruto said in his mind before he flapped his wings and lifted himself into the air before he opened his wings and began to sail through the air. Perhaps it's due to you being in Konoha for so long. After all, what would people say if they saw an angel flying through the air at night? Kyuubi said, with his vessel ascending higher into the air until he was above the clouds, allowing him to see the second sky, as some call it, above the clouds themselves. It would cause alarm for people and would make the foolish try to hunt, said Angel down for fear of their safety. Naruto said, as he sailed with his wings scraping the cloud below him and made a hard turn through the air before he flew straight again. Exactly, but it's not all too bad for you. Remember the last time you used those wings in that village filled with women and that group of girls saw you? He said with Naruto shuddering in fear. Don't remind me. Naruto said as he soared through the air and before he stopped suddenly as a bolt of lightning shot in front of him. Naruto then looked down to find the person that fired it before he dodged a second shot aimed at him. He quickly moved to the left and missed one shot before a second one nailed him in his back, causing him to scream out in pain before he looked towards the ground and saw another shot fired towards him. Naruto cussed loudly before he flapped hard, causing his body to be pushed forcefully away from the bolt of lightning, but that didn't mean more followed afterwards. Naruto continued to dodge the multiple bolts of lightning firing in consecutive times, all the while wondering who was firing them. Who the hell is doing that? Naruto thought as he dodged another one before he ascended back into the clouds and started to fly over them, but the lightning continued to follow. I don't know, Kit, but by the way he is firing at you it appears that he wants you to find him. Kyuubi said as Naruto continued to dodge the strikes and was getting very annoyed by this. Well, ask and ye shall receive. Naruto thought as he caused his body to remain still and began to turn his body upwards, allowing him to climb higher into the sky with his back arched before he twisted his body and sailed through the air before he began to descend towards the ground, causing the lightning to reappear. Naruto dodged with ease, as he descended towards the ground before he got so low that he neared the ground. Naruto then began to turn upwards again and ascended in the air again like a roller coaster, but this time Naruto had his right arm in front of him calling out, "Lightning release, static edge," and fired a single lightning bolt towards the area. The person continued to fire lightning at him. When the lightning hit the ground, a cloud of smoke built up around said area with Naruto flying right into it with his right arm edged backwards and sending it forward. Indeed, Naruto was right in the location of the ailment, as his fist connected with hard metal and giving a loud clang sound that echoed all over the area. When the smoke cleared, it revealed his fist hitting against a large black Zanbeitu sword with the user of the sword behind the blade, upholding it from his fist. Who the hell are you and why are you attacking me? He said with the man behind the weapon letting out a small laugh. Isn't it obvious? I want your position, war. The man behind the sword said, as he picked it up from the ground and took a slash at Naruto, who simply bent backwards and allowed the blade to sail over his upper body, leaving the man open for attack. Naruto then returned to his standing position and saw the man scowling at him. So you're a disciple? I never thought I would face one again after the massacre. Naruto said with the man's scowl becoming a dark snarl. It's your fault that so many of us died at the hands of you and the other horsemen on that day, but I will exact the revenge of my brothers and sisters and take your rank. The man said with Naruto getting a good look of him. The man had brown eyes and a bald head that was devoid of hair, due to him missing his eyebrows. He wore nothing but black battle trunks along with black arm and leg bracers that held the designs of the Egyptian cross on them. Naruto also saw that the man's body was also as devoid of hair, as not a single trace of anything but a small tattoo on his chest that looked like a downward star. Well, I'm sorry you feel that way, but as you know that the disciples were supposed to challenge us for our positions in the Four Horsemen, not declare war with the four of us together. Naruto said before the man sent another slash at the blonde, which missed as Naruto hopped into the air and floated in the wind. The man then stabbed his sword into the ground and slammed his fist into his chest before getting down on one knee, causing Naruto to raise an eyebrow. My name is Yugito Naruto, and I wish to challenge you for your position in the Four Horsemen in a next sacramentum. He said with Naruto scoffing loudly. You damn disciples are so quick to end your lives for power, that's probably why so many of you are dead. He said with Argo growling at him. Do you accept the challenge or not? He asked with Naruto lowering towards the ground and kneeled before Argo. Very well, I will accept it, but don't expect a true fight from me. You won't last any longer than one hit. He said with Argo growling as he stood up with his sword in hand. Shut up. Now bring out your bond weapon so that I may kill you and claim it as my own. He said with Naruto shaking his head. I won't need it. You're not worthy enough to face my weapons. He said with Argo letting out a mighty yell as raised his sword into the air. Shut your mouth, for I will become the next war. He said sending the blade down, only to his shock finding Naruto catch it in his hand effortlessly. Naruto then brought up his right hand with his palms open, as lightning began to build around his fingers before he closed his fist, causing lightning to cover his fist. Naruto then slammed it into Argo's stomach, causing him to cry out in pain as he backed away from the blonde and took hold of the now bleeding area in his stomach. See what I mean? You can't honestly believe that you are strong enough to face war, death, strife, or even fury at your level. You are by far the weakest disciple I've ever met. Naruto said with Argo growling as he brought his sword in front of him and stabbed it into the ground with his hands on the handle. This isn't over, you bastard. I'll return to the Amatsu no Ten and train harder than before until I come back here and take my place on the Four Horsemen. He said before he was consumed in smoke and disappeared from the area. TSSH, just like a Ing disciple does when things get too hard for them to handle or the situation is a little harder than they first imagined. Naruto said before he flapped his wings and began to fly back to camp. Things could have gotten worse, Kit, and at least this one wasn't as stupid as the ones that challenged both you and death at the same time. He said with Naruto smirking brightly, remembering the day that he and Death killed 20 disciples together. He remembered fighting alongside the man that was possibly the strongest out of the Four Horsemen and taking out a group of idiot disciples in less than 1 minute. At least when Death is around, things get interesting very fast. Naruto responded to his fox companion, as they neared the campsite with Naruto landing near the trees and resealing his wings, seeing as how he wanted to keep this a secret for as long as he could. Damn straight, Kyuubi said with his vessel, walking over to the campsite as quietly as possible and fell asleep under the trees, failing to see the eyes of Ino that saw him return and looked worriedly at him. Naruto-kun, what are you hiding from us and from me? Ino thought before she went back to sleep, hoping to get some answers in the morning. 1 week later, the group could currently be seen on walking through a village within Yuki no Kuni after taking such a long ride on the fiery boat due to unforeseen weather problems in the ocean. The village was quite small, only a few dozen houses were erected it seemed. The town was completely engulfed in snow, hence the name of the country, but the snow gave the village a cozy ambiance to it. There were at least provisions that any town needed, lodging for tourists, restaurants, clothing stores, anything that someone would need to be comfortable there. While the others marveled at the looks of the village they were embarking through, they couldn't help but notice Naruto's sudden change in attitude, since he looked more relaxed than usual, or the fact that the people around them greeting Naruto with smiles and sometimes even bowing to him for some odd reason. Soon it came to a point when someone finally asked about it, and that someone of course being Sakura. Naruto, what's up with you? Why are you acting so different all of a sudden? She asked with everyone else nodding while Naruto shrugged his shoulders. I guess it's probably because I haven't been here in a little while. Naruto said with everyone else face faulting, already figuring that out. Sakura however wanted to know what was up with him, so she quickly voiced her next question. Well, when was the last time you came here? About 2 years ago when I was on my travels and I needed a place to stay for a while. I don't know what it is, but I can't help but feel peace here. Naruto said with Sasuke scoffing. I don't know what you can feel while living here, it doesn't look like much. Sasuke said, not truly seeing what was so great a place stuck in the ing cold at 10 degrees mind you. It's very common for an outsider that has never lived here to say that, but then again you know that as well, don't you, Naruto-kun? Said a voice, causing everyone to pause and look to the side to find the source. They all turned to gaze at the sight of a woman appearing to be 29, standing at 6 feet 1 with long black hair and pure white streaks going through her hair and stunning misty purple eyes. She wore a long-sleeve white shirt that hung over her mid-drift and blue pants with blue shinobi sandals and a white cloak over everything. She had a Yuki headband tied around her forehead with a white strap. While everyone looked the girl over, she walked over to the blonde-haired shinobi and stopped in front of him with her arms crossed over her chest. I thought you were supposed to send me a letter when you come into town, Naruto. She said with Naruto simply smirking at her. I guess I forgot. he said before the woman huffed before bringing him into a hug. It's good to see you, little brother, she said, resting her head on top of his and ran her hand through his gold locks. Same here, Maya-ne-chan, Naruto said, hugging her back before the woman backed up and smirked at him. You've gotten so big since I last saw, and you look so cute too. I'm pretty sure that give a couple more years and you'll be an instant lady killer, she said, with Naruto blushing slightly. Do you always have to say that shit in front of people? He said, with the woman smiling at him and rubbed his head. Of course I do, it's my job, remember, she said, with the group behind the two looking confused as ever. Excuse me, miss, but how do you know Naruto? Ino asked, with the hint of jealousy evident in her voice. Choji, Shikamaru, Kakashi, and Asuma were all wondering if this girl was single or if Naruto hasn't tapped that yet. Sakura spared a quick glance towards the girl and Sasuke and gasped when she saw the Uchiha's eyes also darting towards Maya, making her burst in rage at the bitch attracting the eyes of her man. Stay away from Sasuke-kun, you hussy, he's mine, Sakura thought, with Maya looking at the group of guys checking her out, and while she liked the attention, she knew that whenever Naruto was around then Armageddon comes to those with prying eyes towards his sister. As such, she simply smiled at them with a warm smile that could turn all of Snow Country into a field of flowers. My name is Matsukani Maya, I'm Naruto's older sister, Maya said, with the others looking surprised. Naruto never mentioned him having a sister. But how can that be? You two look nothing alike, Sakura pointed out, obviously confused at the new piece of knowledge she now had on the blonde boy. She then looked over towards Team 10, and while they looked confused as she did, she saw that they didn't look as surprised as she did. She then remembered the conversation Kakashi had with Naruto on their last joint mission. He stated that their teams have learned past his name, and by the way, they were so comfortable around him during said time made her wonder what was so great about the boy. While we don't look alike appearance-wise, it doesn't stop us from being family to the other. Especially after that night, Naruto said, with Maya smirking at her little brother. I see you still remember that night, she said, with Naruto glaring at her. Of course I do, it changed my life, remember, he said, with her nodding her head before she looked back to the group that came with the blonde, and saw the lost looks on their faces. Sorry about all that, anyway I'm sure you all are tired from your trip. Koyuki-sama has been expecting your visit and is allowing you to stay in her home, Maya said, with everyone looking happy and Kakashi stepping forward and bowed to her. Thank you for your kindness towards us, he said, with Maya shaking her head. Don't thank me, it's thanks to Koyuki having a very close relationship with Naruto, she said, with Naruto blushing slightly and swore to get revenge for her saying that. Ino was curious about the tone she said that in, but before she could ask on it, the group moved towards the home of one Kazuhana Koyuki, the daimyo of Snow Country after the death of Kazuhana Dotu 6 years ago. Later that day, the group of Konoha shinobi sat in the room the Koyuki resided in as the leader of the Land of Snow. Maya stated that this was where they would be briefed on the mission to come and what their duty would be during said mission. Kakashi took in the area with amazement, as it looked nothing like it did when he was here those many years ago when the girl's father died. In addition, it looked as if something big came here and swept the place over before changing it from the inside out. Kazuhana Dotu's death was something that surprised the Junin immensely, as that man had control of the Yuki Shinobi program, so no matter what powerhouse came into the country, the man could easily fight off said powerhouse. However, Naruto claims to be the one responsible for his death, and while it was something he was willing to question, he knew that the blonde boy was full of surprises and at any given moment would spring one on you. The white-haired man couldn't deny the fact that he was both jealous and curious of the blonde-haired shinobi, as he was an epitome of secrets and the man could not even find out one of them. The only thing he knew about the boy was the fact that he held the Kyuubi no Yoko, and was trained by a very powerful man. That was all he knew, while the other teams knew more about the blonde boy than even he himself, and that was something that filled the Junin with envy of the boy. All thoughts the Junin would have followed were ceased as the door to reveal Maya walking in the room with Koyuki and her manager Sandayu beside her. However, all eyes settled on the bundle in Mia's arms, which looked like a sleeping 2-year-old girl with blonde hair and black highlights going through it and was tied into a small bun. She was currently wearing a blue kimono with white flower petals all over it and had her arms resting on over the woman's chest and resting her head on her neck. When Koyuki sat in her seat, it told the others that it was time to debrief them on the mission at hand. I would like to thank all of you for coming to our aid at the moment, as I am sure that our shinobi aren't fully able to handle this group. Koyuki said with Kakashi speaking up. It's an honor for us to serve you, Koyuki-sama. Please tell us what you wish for us to do. Kakashi said in a respectable tone.